Welcome to Small Arms Solutions. By a very popular request, I've had numerous requests to do reviews on the HK MR series. So right now, thanks to Dave Montana over Hunter Rifle Works, we have a MR762A1. I do not have access to the MR556A1 yet, but that is one that I am working on. So let's start talking about a little bit of the history behind this. Probably going back to the 2004-2005 time period is about there when you started seeing the HK 416, or at that time HK M4, come into fruition. Designed by former Special Forces, former Delta gentlemen, along with some people from H&K. The rifle was designed as an alternative to the direct impingement or internal piston rifle. This, on the other hand, is a external piston short stroke tappet. The claim was that the external piston is more reliable than the direct impingement or the internal piston system, which still has yet to be seen, in many people's eyes. Both systems have their unique characteristics. Both have their benefits. Both have their setbacks. But that's not for this video. Today we're going to be talking about the MR762. Now, the MR762 comes out of the HK 417. The 417 was the 7.62 by 51 millimeter version of the 416. It certainly would make sense for HK to have the MR556, or in that case the HK 416 and 556, and then scale it up and have a 7.62 millimeter version of it as well. Especially with the global war on terror, we're seeing a lot of longer range shots available through Afghanistan. Not so much Iraq, but so much for Afghanistan, where that longer range is very beneficial. HK certainly has answered that call. This rifle has been in service in many countries, including the German army. Hell, even the U.S. military has now adopted a version of this for their new M110C. The rifle has definitely gained a lot of popularity. Very heavy. It's typical what you expect out of Germans. It's overbuilt. It's sturdy, which are all good things. The rifle has worked very well as an assault rifle, as a selective fire. It also works very well as a DMR type rifle. The MR762 was designed more as an accurized rifle than a military type rifle. Now, the barrel that we're going to be talking about here in a few minutes, this is not a chrome lined barrel. This is a stainless steel barrel that's designed for accuracy over the durability of the chrome plated. But I think what we're going to do is we're going to go from back to front and go over this. Now, we're going to assume that you don't know that much about the HK 416, so we're going to be a little more thorough and not assuming you know so much about its 556 counterpart. Well, first off, what the MR762 means is this is a commercial variation. The commercial variation, what that means is it's semi-automatic only. And there have been some things done to this rifle to ensure that you're not going to convert it. For instance, the upper and lower receivers, the barrel extension has which we're going to see in a little bit, it has a post that sticks out that has to have a groove that is cut into the bolt carrier that mate so the bolt can close. So you could not install a standard fully automatic bolt carrier group in any of these MR series rifles. Mechanically, they're the same, except for you have a semi-automatic only trigger in here versus a selective fire, and the barrels on the military versions are generally always chrome-plated. So starting from the back, we have a proprietary stock. Now, that is the one thing you may look at as a downfall on the HK MR series, both the 556 and the 762. Most of the components on them are proprietary to H&K. There are very few parts, period, that you could take from a AR-10 type rifle and put onto the MR556, the stock including. We have two sling mounts on here for a cloth sling. It's adjustable, like you'd expect out of any type of an M16 or M4 system. Now, the back of the stock opens, and we're going to take a look at that right now, by rotating. And when you remove, you have two things. You have two slots in here for battery storage. But you also will see for the MR556, you have a tool right here. What we have here is an Allen key, which this Allen key is specifically a disassembly tool. And we're going to see what that's going to be used for in a minute. Now, while we're looking at the receiver extension, I want you to take a look in the back here. I want you to see these flutes that are here in the back of the receiver extension. What that is designed for is to egress water. If the rifle was dropped in water, you wouldn't have the hydrostatic buildup, because as the buffer would move, it would have a place for the water to go. Now, I'm not really sure how well that works due to the fact that it has an enclosed cap on the back. There's nowhere for the water to leak out of the back, but that's what the design intent was. So you look at the upper receiver. We have, these are all 7075 T6. They are proprietary to H&K. Milsander 1913 rail. You will see we do have a forward assist. We also do have a fire cartridge case deflector. We have a polymer ejection port cover. An interesting note on the ejection port cover, the original HK M4s did not have the ejection port cover. It was not deemed necessary. That was something that they changed as it progressed towards the HK 416. People wanted to see it, so they did. But it is polymer. This is not an ambidextrous rifle. You have an ambidextrous safety on it. That's it. But your bolt catch and your magazine releases are all in the standard locations. Now, your pivot pins, your rear and your front pivot pins, these are proprietary. That is what requires the use of a special pin. Now, when we go to disassemble, we'll show you exactly what that means. Your charging handle does have an extended latch on it for easier to grasp. You have a rather interesting shaped pistol grip on here. There's a very large swell on the rear. I haven't been able to get used to it. I'm more used to the Magpul than the Myod grips. This is a little weird of a feel to me. I think it probably would take a little bit of time to get used to. But this is also a proprietary H&K component. Standard magazine, standard trigger guard. Now the flare, there's more of a flare on the magazine well, a little bit easier to install the magazine, especially in low-level light conditions. While we're here, we'll talk about the magazine as well. This is a proprietary magazine. This is not a standard SR25 type magazine. If you look at it, it looks sort of like a G36 magazine on steroids. It has a similar polymer configuration. This is 20 rounds. They also have a 10-round magazine, which is another issue where it comes to proprietary. You're only going to be getting these magazines through H&K. So if you do buy one of these rifles, and the 762 anyways, you do want to stock up on some magazines. Now in the front, we'll see we have a handguard. Now this is a quad 1913 rail handguard. Some of the newer versions coming out, will see the M-Lock. You may even see key mod. But this is the standard one that's been used by H&K since the introduction, which is the quad mill standard 1913 rail. This is a proprietary material that's used by H&K. If I recall, it's some kind of a steel that comes out of France someplace. It's a very durable barrel. The rifling is readily unique in it in the fact that as a bullet goes down the barrel, you get a tighter choke as further down the barrel the bullet goes. So in essence, you have it getting a little bit narrower, creating a tighter gas seal, and it's supposed to increase accuracy as well as increase velocity. And I've tested these things in the past, not this particular type of rifle, but other ones, and you see very little difference in velocity increase. The flash suppressor is a birdcage type. So the rest of the secrets of this thing is going to be in the inside. I do want to talk about this optic as well. This is the VCOG. This is the optic I chose to put on here. This particular optic is a 1-to-6 power. It's become very quickly one of my favorite optics. You do have battery power in there, as well as a black reticle as well as a red reticle. It is an ideal combat scope. 1-to-4 power. You don't want to go over 4 power for a combat scope. But you can go up to 6 power to get you slightly more for use with the 7.62. So we're going to take a look at the inside. What I want to do is I'm going to go over the bolt carrier group, because the bolt carrier group is extremely different from anything else that's out there. And then we're going to remove the handguard, and we're going to take a look at the gas system itself. You do notice we have 2 handguards here. One is shorter and one is longer. So these are 2 of the different versions that are available from H&K. So starting, we're going to show you what this tool is necessary. For you to be able to break open the rifle, there is a plunger on here that works as a lock that you have to use this tool to push in. So now that allows you to open the rifle up and to remove the bolt carrier group. Bolt carrier group is, again, all proprietary. The bolt carrier, everything is proprietary. Very, very well made, which you would expect out of Germans. But there's something very specific I want you to look at. And it's this piece right here. This is a firing pin safety. What happens is when this is engaged, the firing pin cannot move forward, even by force of inertia. As the hammer comes up, it tips upward on this firing pin block and then strikes the firing pin, allowing it to go through and to fire the cartridge. This is one of the issues regarding external piston on an M16 type rifle. Generally, you have to overgas them for the gun to be able to work. And in a lot of cases, to get them to work reliably, you have to have a lot of gas in there, and you're driving back the bolt very quickly, a higher cyclic rate. So when you have that higher cyclic rate, the inertia of the firing pin is more apt to detonate a cartridge on the bolt closing. The HK, both the 416 and the 417, have an extremely high rate of fire. And that rate of fire was high enough that it was causing slam fires. So both versions ended up going with this firing pin block safety on it to prevent that. Now, to me, that's a deficiency in the system. I don't believe that you should be having a rate of fire high enough that you're causing that problem that you would require a firing pin safety. There's never been a need for, on any M16 or AR-10 type rifle, the need for a firing pin safety. This is unique to this rifle due to the fact that it is extremely overgassed in the way that it functions. So that's extremely unique. Now, I have seen some of the Navy SEAL close quarter battle versions of the HK 417 where they've even removed it. And that's in their SOPs to remove it, so their ammunition must have a hard enough primer where they're confident they're not going to run into that issue. But the average 416, 417, you're going to find, whether it's commercial MR or standard military, is going to have this firing pin block. Now we're going to go over some other things as well. Now we're going to remove the firing pin. Now we do have a captive firing pin retaining pin, which is, I don't know why people have not picked up on this throughout the industry. This would be an excellent enhancement on any AR-15 or M16 type bolt carrier group. I don't know why it's been escaping people. Firing pin spring. We can lift the cam pin right out, and then we pull the bolt right out. As you can see, this is not a standard AR-10 type bolt. Now, I want you to take a look at the breech face here, where you see two ejectors. This is something that was started off, I think probably the first person I see do this was Carl Lewis on his versions. As well as I've seen him on the DPMS Gen 2 308s, and I'm starting to see him on other 308s. One of the issues that comes up with the shorter barrels that you get on the 7.62s, you have a higher opening bolt. And when you have the bolt opening up at a higher velocity, sometimes a single ejector spring isn't enough to get that cartridge case out of the gun before the bolt begins to close. Recently, you had found that with a rifle I've been working on, which had the gas port was too large, and I was having numerous failures to eject, and that was because I ended up having to use a heavier buffer on that rifle to calm it down. But what these guys have done is by putting two ejectors in there, it mostly comes up with the shorter barrels, the 12.5, 13-inch barrels. What happens is by having the two springs, it gives that extra oomph in there to make sure it ejects that cartridge case before it has time for the bolt to close and to catch it. Now, you will be chasing after your brass a lot further because it does throw them a lot farther. But this is a reliability enhancement on these rifles, the 16-inch barrels, but they really come into play with the shorter barrels. For reassembly, we just put that back in like so. Now we're going to put the cam pin in straight because we want to make sure that that hole in the cam pin is going to be straight so the firing pin can catch it. It's also easier to put the firing pin spring in there first. And then drop it in. Now when you push that in, you got to make sure that the firing pin block engages it. Push it forward. And now we have our bolt carrier back. Now what we're going to do is we're going to separate the upper and lower receiver. This one here is extremely tight, so. And I will say that about these receivers, they are very tight. Now this is going to require the use of a separate. Now for the HK MR762 and MR556 requires a Allen key on here. Now with the military versions, you actually use a bolt locking lug to turn those screws. What we're going to do is we're going to remove this because I want to remove the handguard so we can take a closer look at the gas system. You will notice I did put the Manta rail covers on here, and there was a reason for that. This thing does get quite hot when you're shooting it, so it's pretty necessary. Now we can see the nitty-gritty of this operating system. Now, one of the areas where I feel direct impingement or internal piston is superior is the fact that you have less impeding on the harmonics of the barrel. You have a very heavy gas block that's drilled and pinned in two places in here, and you have a very heavy barrel nut. So that will impede some of the harmonics of this barrel, which I do think will affect accuracy, where you have a your average AR-10 or AR-15 with a free-floating handguard, you have literally nothing on there. The gas tube itself causes very little, if any, issue on barrel harmonics. So this is one of the negatives, I think, towards this type of a gun, is you having all this impeding on the harmonics. Now, looking at the gas system, you can pull rearward. We have the operating rod, and we have the piston. Now, the piston is chrome-plated. You'll also notice that we do have some gas rings on there. Now, the reason why you have gas rings on there is primarily it allows you to use less gas. If you were to look at like an AK type system where you have no gas rings, you have basically the piston floating inside of the gas block, you have to have a lot of gas in there because a lot of gas is going to escape around the piston because it's not sealed. And that's going to cause you to need more gas to operate the mechanism. When utilizing the gas rings, what it does is it seals up the gas chamber. So you can utilize less gas. Now, when you utilize less gas, it's easier on the system, and it also makes it more conducive to use sound suppressors because you can adjust how much that gas flow is by having those on there. Although this particular version does not have an adjustable gas block on it, the military versions will have an adjustable gas block for using sound suppressors. But it's a very robust system. It's very heavy. It bleeds the gas out of the front instead of the sides. But again, it's a very, very heavy components. Reassembly, I want to put the piston in first. Into the sleeve. And there we go. This is a 16-inch barrel with 4 lands and grooves, right-hand twist. It's a 1-turn and 12-inch twist. So it worked excellent with any 175 or 168 grain ammunition as well as standard military 147 grain ball. So to reinstall. Tighten that back down. Now, it is not short. You're looking at a stock with extended length of about 38.10 inches. So it's not short. It's definitely not light either. You're looking at just under 10 pounds. But that's what you would expect out of this type of a rifle. It's not designed as lightweight. It's typical German overbuilt. As this carrier goes into the receiver, you can feel that there's friction as it starts to close. Now we'll take a look at the lower receiver. You do have a very heavy-duty tungsten weight buffer on it. But the most interesting thing about this is the trigger itself. Now, as you know, with a regular AR-15, once you add the trigger forward, you're no longer able to engage the safety. Not so with this. This one, you can still engage the safety with the hammer forward. Now, this has escaped this weapons platform forever. I think this is really a good safety idea, is to be able to engage the safety with the hammer forward. But that's not something anybody else has done. Both the HK MR762A1 and MR762A1 both have this feature. But the receivers, you can see, very well overbuilt. So we're going to reassemble. So what we have here is a very well-built rifle. This scope is it complements it quite well due to the fact that you have this up to 6 power, but still gives you that lower power enough where it's still good as a closer quarter type rifle. You know, it's certainly an ideal rifle for like the fields of Afghanistan where you do have those longer range shots. It's still a little heavier than an AR. I think what we're going to do now is we're going to take it out to the range and we're going to see how it shoots. Well, it shot quite well. We were definitely sub MOA. We're showing you a couple targets there. The ammunition I used was the Black Hills 175 grain OTM. Again, it shot quite well. It feels very good when you shoot it. It's heavy. It's very smooth. Absolutely. Now, it's not for the faint-hearted for as far as price tags. You're looking at well over $3,000 these days. These are not very common. We're hoping with the HK plant opening up in Georgia that we're going to see more of these in the market.